Hello, this is Danny Doyle, and we are now at interlude number 2. The town that was just flooded is now Omega flooded, and its residents have all offered to join our army. So let's talk about them. First up is Flint, and he is sort of the poster child for this particular group of units. Pretty commonly considered to be the best amongst them. He starts with A-rank staves, and we just got a bunch of warp staffs, and we've been focusing super hard on barrier and rescue and mend usage in order to raise Mac and Vivek's staff rank. Kuzia kind of got there naturally, but I was using a lot of healing on her, so I don't know if that would be considered spamming or not. A lot of healing was necessary, but I did definitely heal her a few times specifically just to get experience or staff experience. Whereas Flint just shows up with it for free. So that's really, really good. Just a free warper is generally better than anything else you're going to get in this match of units in most playthroughs. In an LTC context, absolutely the best of the bunch. No contest, you're picking him every single time if you care about LTCing or going fast. And I don't even necessarily think that he's a bad pick for slow going, because like warp is still quite useful, even if you're just warping around to like get a side objective easier, right? You know, like you saw me, I used warp to steal a red gem. So you can find your uses for it even if you're not trying to save turns. That said, his stats are kind of dookie, right? Like 8 magic, that means that before promotion, he has 4 warp range. After promotion, he's 5 warp range. That's not very good. Like, that is not very good. We have a better warp range on 0% Mac. And remember, in a growth's context, Mac would have a much higher warp range. We have a better warp range on 0% growth's Kuzia. And remember, in growth's context, she would also have a higher one. Now, he is unpromoted, so you can just immediately feed him a Master Seal in order to boost him up to Bishop, and that gives him, I believe, just 1 more warp range, because he has +2 magic on promotion, which is nice. He's not really a combat unit. Like, he does have speed. He has magic and speed, sort of like a balance between the two of them. He'll have a lower, taunt rank, and the primary reason he's here is for the staffing. So he makes the argument, do you need another warper compared to the ones that you potentially already have? We already have 2, and we're gonna get a 3rd one very, very, very soon. And then there are some other warpers that we get that we don't have recruited yet, right? Because Vivek is the one who I say we're gonna get very soon, but we have him, he just hasn't hit warp yet. There are a couple units that have warp for free that are gonna, or, either have warp for free or are closer to warp that show up relatively soon. So Flint asks the question, like, how much do you actually need a warp staff? And oftentimes the answer is more than you need everyone else who's here. But otherwise he doesn't really have too much to offer. The fact that he needs a Master Seal in order to see combat is definitely a little bit tragic, but we did just steal a Master Seal, and there's quite a few more Master Seals coming up in the next map. There's one that we could get here in the interlude, and then there are 2 that we definitely get in the next map. So it's not like we're at a point in the game where Master Seals are in super duper high command. Which is why Sarandi's big claim to fame being the pre-promote of the bunch is not necessarily upside you might think it is. Now, her already being promoted and therefore having her horse is definitely a benefit over starting out as an archer and needing a seal to become a ranger or sniper if you're based. But it's not like there are so many units demanding Master Seals right now that you are tight and can't make someone else into a ranger, right? As a result, Sarandi is kind of just like a mid pre-promote. Like, her stats are just not as good as you want them to be. 11 strength, 14 speed is fine, asterisk. Like, it's not great. Her only 1-2 range option as well is the light brand, which we do have, but like, I don't know. I kind of like that on my flyer. Like, D Sunwing makes very good use of 1-2 range with the light brand. Well, I guess Wind Sword too, like magical swords, right? Magical swords are her sort of bread and butter. And she does have the rank for them. B rank and C rank are decent, and if you just had an archer and promoted them, you wouldn't have a good sword rank. If you just had a mercenary and promoted them, you wouldn't have a good bow rank. So she kind of offers sort of the all-around package. Her skill is fine, her speed is fine, her strength is fine, her bulk is fine and mixed, and her luck is, like, good enough she probably doesn't need a Hoplon card unless you're facing a killer weapon. The other claim to fame she has is Yagensi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Yagensi is basically like a personal silver bow. It's 2 less might than the silver bow, but it's also 10 more hit. I guess it's kind of like a slightly redone silver bow because like it has more hit but less might. It's basically fine. Like, it's a pretty good weapon, but it doesn't do anything special for you. You know, it doesn't have any inherent crit, which we saw the chill sort of opened up some new strategies with that, using the crits. It doesn't give any boosting properties. It's just a generically good weapon. And that's fitting because she's just a generically, I wouldn't even say good, generically mid unit. Like, she makes the case for like, hey, you don't want to spend money on a Master Seal, you just want a capable filler unit, that's fine, that's me. You didn't train floor, I can be your floor. Meanwhile, Liam also has a personal weapon, and it does give him something special. Additional bulk, mixed bulk, better mixed bulk than Sarandi. He also has better strength than her, and that's before eating a Master Seal, which he can do immediately in order to become a ranger with mostly better stats than her. I say mostly because his speed it leaves something to be desired. Let's just say that. 9 speed at base, even after you account for either sniper or ranger promotion bonuses. It's not cutting it. Like, Liam is not doubling anything, and as the game goes on, especially because his speed growth is not especially good, he will get doubled, and that will cut into his bulk. Liam is, in many ways, Armored Bow the unit, because 7 defense and 1 resistance is not especially tanky, but when he has the Armored Bow equipped, he gets 1-2 range, very high might, flyer effective weapon, and he's now got 11 in both of his defensive stats as his bases, right? So he becomes this sort of front-lining 1-2 range, usually Nomad, but you can make him a sniper. But he also has 30 durability. You can use other weapons with him. I've used him in a playthrough. I used him alongside Floor, and while Floor was doubling everything, Liam was getting doubled by everything. But he could still use other weapons in order to sort of, like, conserve the Armored Bow for when he needed to enemy phase. Of course, he has D-rank bows, so if you want to use some of the very good bows that are not the Armored Bow, you know, if you want to use the Brave Bow, the Great Arc, the Killer Bow even, like, he needs either the weapon rank he gains from promotion or weapon rank that he gains from being used, or both, depending on the rank of the bow you want to use. Being an archer at this point in the game with D-rank bows is actually incredibly tragic, and I do think that D-rank bows holds him back more than 9 speed, although the 9 speed is definitely also an extremely sad downside. That said, Liam starts at level 10. If you promote him, he offers you not a strictly better unit than Sarandi, but better in most aspects. He's bulkier with the Armored Bow, and he has that mixed bulk with the Armored Bow. And he's slower, but, like, not so much slower that you're like, God, this awful piece of garbage compared to, like, the actual speed god Sarandi. They're kind of just both slower than you would want them to be, and he's even slower than that. But otherwise, he is oftentimes, he feels like he has more of a niche than her, like as being sort of like the reliable tank. He's almost, I mean, he even says in the dialogue, he wants to be a bow armor, and he kind of is. He's slow, he's bulky, he hits hard. The main reason I think that he is an archer instead of a bow armor is that there were no new classes added to this game other than Kuja. Everything else is vanilla Sacred Stones classes. Well, Halberdier too. So yeah, that's probably the logic. Like, he is a bow armor for all intents and purposes, but he gets to break out of that Armor Knight 4 move zone and get himself a horse. Now, we've got to admit, it is still a ranger horse, right? So it's not quite paladin horse, but it's also not a great knight horse, so it does have one more than that. And as a result, he ends up being, come on, where is he? He ends up being one of the better armor knights in the game, despite not being an armor knight, if you want to think about him that way. Min-maxed in the opposite direction is Bloody Jeb. No defense. This guy is not an armor knight, which makes him cringe. He does, however, have 12 strength and 16 speed. The 12 strength should be familiar. Like, that is Liam's strength. He's hitting just as hard as Liam, although he offers you some pretty cool weapons. But the 16 speed is new. Like, he, instead of getting doubled by everything, he'll double a lot of stuff. If you promote him to Berserker, he gains even more speed off of that, bringing him up to 17. If you promote him to Warrior, then he can take advantage of his high might and speed to be a warrior that doubles. I talked about the niceness of this with Geese, and how, like, being a warrior that doubles means that he can often just, like, delete flyers that Shale struggles to, or that Floor struggles to, just because high might plus high speed is very, very good. Bloody Jeb basically can do that job, but, like, don't make him frontline. He really fucking doesn't want to. The biggest appeal of picking Bloody Jeb, I believe, is his inventory. Hatchet, Killer Axe, Devil Axe, and Fiend Cleaver are some very good weapons. Yeah, so the big appeal is, like, either you can sell these or use these. This is one of only 2 Killer Axes in the game. This is one of only 2 Hatchets in the game. This is the only Fiend Cleaver in the game, to my knowledge. And I think this is one of 2 Devil Axes. And Jeb offers you all of them on a body who can, like, actually do some stuff, potentially. If you ignore the fact that he cannot fucking survive on the front lines. Now, of course, the downside is, if you want someone to just hit hard, you can get Liam, and you also get several other quite strong infantry units coming up in the upcoming chapters, right? You get some other people who can fulfill that hard-hitting quota. So Jeb ends up being mostly these items that get handed off to other better people. Still, his inventory is very good, and as a unit, he is immensely usable, and immensely fucking funny. Like, he's a very funny unit. On the topic of someone who you pick for their inventory, Arel is what is referred to in the community as a pessimist pick. He has a Killer Lance and a Master Seal, and for most people, that is the reason that you pick him. A level 4 soldier, going into chapter 12 of a 20-chapter campaign, is not the greatest proposition, and his growths are fine, but not outstanding. There is an Est in chapter 13, Josie, who has, like, phenomenal growths and sort of says, like, hey, train me. But Arel, he's not terrible, right? Like, you can train him and he'll turn out fine. He is around the like, decent-ish stats and decent-ish growths. He's very well-rounded, right? But he is a level 4 soldier. So these stats are actually not too far behind people like Bloody Jeb, not you, people like Liam, people like Flint, people like Sarandi. He doesn't look out of place amongst this group in terms of his basis, right? Like, if you look at just him versus Sarandi, it's actually, like, kind of damning for her how close she is to this laughable, memeable Ford soldier. But he's not especially min-maxed, right? He doesn't have the upside that she has of good ranks. He doesn't have the upside that Flint has of being a very good free warper. Doesn't have Liam's bulk. Doesn't have Jeb's offenses. The biggest thing that Arel offers to you is Killer Lance Master Seal, one of the better possible inventories out there. I did talk about Master Seals not being in super high demand, not being like the biggest cost in the world, but part of that comes from the fact that you can get this one from Arel. If you have a number of unpromoted units and you want a Master Seal for one of them, Arel is not a terrible pick. This is also one of only 4 possible Killer Lances in the game. All of the possible Killer Lances come from interlude units, and Arel continues that trend. You might be running out of Killer Lances even if you picked Kim and Garou. And Arel can be like, hey, here's another one. You got some good Lance users on your team, so use this Lance. So that's nice for him. But as far as a unit, he's kind of just a meme. Arguably long-term, he's better than Sarandi, just because, like, he has unpromoted level 4 games. But he is also just a soldier. You know, romhack soldier. You can use him. He's fine, but he's kind of laughable. Yeah, just very average, nothing special about him other than, hey, I want to use another soldier. And, nothing wrong with using another soldier. His stats could definitely be a lot worse. For a level 4 soldier, these are not terrible stats. Honestly, for an Interlude 2 unit, these are not terrible stats. They're just not distributed especially well. And Sarandi's big upside is, like, she gets a personal weapon and she gets a mount for free. Whereas Arel can never have a mount and also needs to use a promotion and promote. But his stats are like a little bit lower than hers. But again, not as much as you might think. Like, this is a very daring comparison, right? These are not great. So, Flint is almost certainly the best of these people, but we're not going to take him. I'm taking the shitty pre-promote, Sarandi, because she has a might support with Killian, and then I'm taking the shitty archer, Liam, because he's bulky. So, that's Interlude 2. Join me next time for Mount Halvan.